Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we're back with another episode of Way Under Underhive. This is a series that is dedicated to brand new players in Necromunda. So if you're trying out Necromunda for the very first time, it can be a very daunting experience and a very daunting game to try to get your mind wrapped around. I mean, there's a lot going on with this game. I mean, you not only do you have individual gangs, you now have a lot more gangs being established beyond the core set of gangs, and now we have the brand new alliance systems coming in with different merchant guilds and criminal alliances and noble houses. It can get a little much, and it could be a little difficult to kind of sort through the information and help you make decisions for your gang. And that's what this series is designed to do. It's designed to help brand new players to get their mind wrapped around the game, to help them to learn the materials so that way they can make good decisions for their gangs and their future campaigns. Now for the next couple of videos, for this one, we'll be actually focusing on different alliances that are available for your gangs throughout the course of a campaign. And due to a poll that I took, I actually posted a poll up on my channel, and the people have actually, you the viewers, have voted overwhelmingly to learn more about the merchant guilds. And we also took a vote to see which videos you guys like to see first. So because of that, we will be talking about the Water Guild, also known as Mercator Nautica is what they're also known in Old Gothic, I think is what it's called, or High Imperial Speech, or whatever it is that they have that they call it. So this is the guild that we'll be talking about today. We'll be doing a couple of things. We'll be giving you an overview of both the positive and impact effects that this alliance will have on your campaign. We'll also talk about the pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses of the Water Guild, as well as some of the benefits and drawbacks. We'll also talk about their Nautican Siphoning Delegation, which is basically an entourage of fighters that they have. We'll talk about each of their fighters and talk about what you can use them for, what kind of skills they have, and then finally give you our overall conclusion on the Water Guild. So that being said, let's get this video on the roll and let's talk about the Water Guild of Mercator Nautica. Alright, so first what we're talking about real quick is what are the positive impacts on campaign play when you are making a guild alliance with the merchant guilds. First of all, you have a special rule called a Band Apart, which means that you get basically of all the benefits and none of the negatives of taking extra fighters. What ends up happening is that if these guys start taking casualties, start losing fighters, it doesn't impact your gang negatively in any way because they're not technically part of your gang, they're just kind of an alliance that goes on. At the same time, you also have these fighters in your entourages for your guild alliances called bodyguards, and these guys help keep the leader of the guild alliance from harm, which is extremely important, being pretty good at getting things done as well. And it's also kind of extremely important as well, because if the leader of the little entourage is with your group and he gets taken out of action, it could be really bad for your guys' alliance later on down the line. At the same way, this is also a good way to help balance out numbers whenever you do scenarios and campaigns. The great part is whenever you bring a guild alliance with you, the fighters that you join up in your crew does not take up any of your crew slots. So let that sink in for a second. That's right, you can bring extra fighters beyond the maximum number of fighters you're allowed to have in a scenario. So bringing experienced fighters with better equipment, with better skills is no way going to impact your crews, and has nothing but a positive impact for you as well in a campaign. Now let's go ahead and talk about negative impacts on campaign pay. Now if you are paying in a campaign where you do have law-abiding versus outlaw effects for your gangs, you can't be an outlaw. That's one of the problems. So if you are a gang that has outlaw status attached to it, you can't take any guild alliances. But if you have an outlaw status put on your gang, it is not the end of the world. And the reason why is because you also have criminal alliances, which are perfect because you can take those in case you're an outlaw. But that's going to be coming down later on down the pike. Now, another negative impact on campaign play is that these guilds, yes, they give you a lot of positive, but they also expect some things in return as well. One of the things you have, of course, is guard duty. Guard duty basically means that you have to basically roll what kind of scenario you're going to play. And based on what guild you have to play those certain scenarios. And there's positive and negatives as impact for those. So that's one of the big reasons that you also have that as well. Another problem that you have is also what is known as ties, what they're known as. Basically, whenever you bring in your guild alliance, they're going to want something in return. Whether it's fighters, equipment that you capture, in some cases money in some extreme cases. And in some cases, these drawbacks we're going to be talking about later on, they could actually be quite significant, and it could actually break your alliance and cause your gang some harm. So you got to take a look at what positive impacts that this alliance brings to you, as well as some of the negative impacts as well, and kind of find a balance to kind of help you out to determine overall whether you want to have a guild alliance for your gang or not. Alright, so with that being said, let's go and talk about your guild alliance with the Water Guild specifically. Now when it comes to any guild alliance, I like to break down the assets between two types of categories. I like to call them tactical as well as strategic assets. Tactical assets are things that the guild alliance brings to the actual game mechanics and affects individuals or combat on the battlefield. So those are considered tactical assets. So these are things that help you out from game to game, from scenario to scenario, and what's happening actually on the battlefield. Now, on the other hand, you also what I like to call strategic assets. As strategic assets are game mechanics that impact your gang during the course of a campaign. So things that help you out during the pre and post battle sequences. Things like getting your gang skills, equipment, money, things that can help you out over the course of a campaign as well. And so by looking at the tactical and the strategic assets that a guild alliance brings, especially with the Water Guild, they're all going to be kind of different. And that's going to also kind of determine whether or not you want to make these guild alliances or not. So let's go and talk about those strategic and tactical assets of the Water Guild. Now, the Water Guild is actually a pretty good tactical asset, which means that they really do really well on the battlefield in the actual games. And the reason why is because of the fighters it brings with its entourage onto the battlefield. The siphoning delegation is actually really, really powerful in terms of close combat and also good for having around on the battlefield. So because of that, they're actually pretty good to keep around at that time. At the same time, the Water Guild is also a pretty good strategic asset as well, meaning it's going to help you out throughout the course of the campaign. And the reason why is because whatever gang ends up hosting an alliance with the Water Guild, they automatically capture enemy fighters easily. Which means if you're a gang, for example, like a Venator gang, for example, and you're really big on making bounties to make incredible amounts of income for yourself, capturing enemy fighters is going to be extremely easy for you to do so, and you can sell those captured fighters for profit, keep their equipment, and make a lot of money at the same time. So if you're looking for something that's going to good mechanics on the battlefield, good mechanics onto the campaign overall, the Water Guild is the guild alliance for you. So now that we're done talking about the tactical and strategic assets, let's go ahead and talk about their benefits and drawbacks. Alright, so the benefits of a Water Guild. First of all, you automatically get a Slopper hanger on absolutely for free. Which basically means that if you roll a d6 on a 6-up, fighters who are in recovery in your gang automatically make a full recovery, which is kind of nice. And the more Sloppers you actually have in your gang, you add to add +1 to that die roll. So if you have 2 Sloppers, for example, they recover on a 5-up. 3 Sloppers, 4-up. You see pretty much how it works. So having a free Slopper is always a good thing because you have a 1 to 6 chance of actually having a fighter in recovery, manage to get in the next scenario. At the same time, you have a special rule called the Water Harvest, and what it ends up happening is that when you roll to capture enemy fighters, you get +1 to roll. At the same time, for every member of the Nottingham Siphoning Delegate who did not go out of action in the scenario, you get additional +1 as well. So because of that makes it really awesome, which means that if you have all 3 Nottingham Delegates still alive at the end of a battle, and you get the +1 bonus to capture enemy fighters, you get a +4 bonus to capture an enemy fighter, which is great. Now the perfect thing about this is that if you capture the enemy fighter, your opponent can't rescue that fighter. They have no recourse. That fighter automatically becomes yours, which is great, which means you don't have to worry about fighting a pesky rescue mission. You can just sell the guy directly to the guilders for a slave, and he can be sold for additional credits. And this is a wonderful game mechanic, especially for Venator gangs. Venator gangs are actually bounty hunter gangs, so this kind of fits with them both narratively and also really helps them out as well. In fact, Iron Major, who's our resident terrain wizard, he's actually playing a Venator gang right now in our Anarchy Road campaign, and he's using the Nottingham Guild, the Water Guild, in order to help him capture enemy fighters. It's really helping him out a lot. Not to mention, probably the most obvious benefit is that you get access to the Nottingham Siphoning Delegation, which is the fighters the Water Guild actually lends out to you to help you fight in your battles. So now that we're done talking about the benefits, let's go ahead and talk about the drawbacks real quick. Alright, so one of the obvious drawbacks of having an alliance with the Water Guild is guard duty, and pretty much every single guild actually has this drawback. What ends up happening is that whenever you're choosing a scenario to play, you roll a d6. On a score of 1, 2, or 3, you must either choose the looters, smash and grab, caravan heist, or escort mission, and basically you must play the defender in those kind of scenarios as well. Now if you roll a 4 up, that's not much of a problem. You can just play whatever normal scenario you want as normal, and if you decide not to play those scenarios, if you fail that guard duty test, you have to test the alliance on that one. So it is kind of rough because you do have to play the defender. Those scenarios are not as advantageous for the defenders, and they don't make as much profit either by pulling those guard duty as well. Another huge drawback that you also have is, well, not, I would guess I wouldn't say so much huge, but another drawback you have, of course, is what's known as the water tithe. This is what a lot of levies is what it's known as. Basically, you have to pay D3 10 credits at the end of every scenario to the Water Guild. So no matter what credits you make, if you make any at all, you always have to pay at least anywhere between 10 to 30 credits to the Water Guild. And if you can't pay that amount, it actually tests the alliance as well. So do expect to pay that. You can get anywhere between 10 to 30 credits being paid. So it's always good enough to have like that much money left in your stash in case you don't get anything out of a scenario. So that's something you got to keep in mind as well when it comes to these guys. And pretty much every single guild alliance that you have has some sort of tithe like this that you actually have to pay. So now that we're done talking about the drawbacks of the Water Guild, let's go ahead and talk about the Nottingham Siphoning Delegation, which is the fighters the guild sends to help you out. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the Nauticon Siphoning Delegation, and it's a pretty solid entourage for the entirety that you can use for this as well. It's got a good mix of equipment and stats to bring the pain. At the same time, it's pretty good for use as battles as well. You pretty much get 3 fighters in this entourage. You get what's known as the Master Nauticon, which is the leader of the delegation. You have the Siphonite as well as the Subnauticon. And at the same time, the nice thing about these guys, if you're one of those kind of people who don't like converting your own miniatures, you can actually purchase the Nauticon Siphoning Delegation from Forge World. It is a little pricey, but the miniatures actually look really good, and they look really solid, so you could use those guys inside of your campaign as well. And of course, if you don't want to purchase them, me for example, I don't like purchasing miniatures if I don't have to. There's a good range of miniatures that are out there that you can use either as proxies, or you can convert your own and make a really cool looking entourage, all being said. So now that we're doing a little quick overview of the Nauticon Siphoning Delegation, let's go ahead and talk about the individual fighters. The first guy we're going to talk about real quick is what's known as the Master Nauticon. That's the first guy we're going to be talking about real quick. And the Master Nauticon is also kind of like the leader of the little guild, of the little group of fighters that you actually have going forward. So let's go and talk about him. So this guy's actually got a pretty solid stat. He's got movement characteristic of 4, a 4+ for weapon skill and ballistic skill, 3 strength and 3 toughness. He's got 2 wounds, a 4+ initiative, 1 attack, 7 leadership, 7 cool, 6 willpower, as well as 6 intelligence. So he's got a pretty good, decent stat line from him as well. At the same time, he's actually pretty well equipped as well. He's got a needle pistol as well as a stiletto knife. So he also has mesh armor too, as well as a bio booster and a stim slug stash. So even though you may not actually think it, this guy is actually really good at close combat, especially. He's got a lot of protection going on with that mesh armor. He's also can increase his stats of that bio booster as well as that stim slug stash. So he's actually pretty good too. Now the really nice thing about the Master Nauticon though, he has the overseer ability. And the overseer ability is the real killer with this fighter. And the reason why is because when you use the overseer ability, it counts as double action. So once your Master Nauticon uses this skill, he can't do anything else. But when ends up happening, he gives a double set of activations to another fighter. You want to pair up the Master Nauticon with the Subnauticon. The Subnauticon is actually this huge ogre of a man that's basically built like a Big Daddy from Bioshock. And he's a close combat monster. And having him be able to do double sets of activations for your water delegation makes him extremely deadly. In fact, if you actually watch our scenarios for the battle reports we do for the Anarchy Road, look for Iron Major's Minotaur battle reports, because you see this in action quite a bit and it's actually quite deadly. And so the Master Nauticon, a very solid choice for your gang. So outside of that, we also was known as the Siphonite as well. The Siphonite is what's known as a guild factotum. Basically, he's kind of like the second command of the gang. Now, his stats are actually pretty mediocre. He's got a 4-inch movement allowance, as well as 5+ for weapon skill, 4+ for ballistic skill. He only has a strength of 2, so not very good, and a toughness of 3. He's also got 1 wound as well. He's got a 4+ for initiative. He's got 1 attack. He has 8+ for leadership, 8+ for cool, 6+ for willpower, as well as 6+ for intelligence. So let's talk about the Siphonite real quick. The Siphonite actually does come with some pretty good equipment. He does have a needle rifle, which is pretty good and pretty helpful as well. He's also got mesh armor for protection, as well as a stiletto knife. But with a strength of 2 and a close combat score of 5 up, you're really not going to need it. He also comes with a cult icon, which is actually kind of weird because there's only 3 members of this entourage, so I'm not sure why they gave it to him. Now, he does have the dodge skill, which is, I guess, pretty good. And the reason why you want to use the dodge skill is because the role that this character plays is basically to be a bullet magnet, okay? He's not going to be doing much of anything, really. I mean, he might be able to get a couple of shots off of that needle rifle, but that's really about it. What you want to do is you want to put this guy in front of your Master Nauticon or your Subnauticon at all times. You're basically going to use the Siphonite as a human shield. Okay, and the reason why is because you don't want to lose the Master Nauticon. Very important to keep that guy around. And the Subnauticon is also really good at close combat, so you want to keep him alive as well. Think of the Siphonite as a juvie level fighter who is completely expendable. And even though he is completely expendable that way, I think that's pretty much the point of this guy. He's basically there to soak up damage to keep the other 2 fighters really alive. So the Siphonite, you're going to put him in the front of the fire, make him absorb all those shots, protect your Master Nauticon or your Subnauticon, whatever one you want to think is more valuable to you. Alright, the last guy we're going to talk about is the Subnauticon. This is probably the reason why you want to take this guild alliance for the most part. So let's talk about it real quick. So he's got a movement allowance of 4. He's also got a 3+ weapon skill, 5+ ballistic skill. He's also got a strength characteristic of 5, of toughness of 5, 3 wounds. He's got initiative 4, 2 attacks. He's got 8+ for leadership, 6+ for cool, 7+ for willpower, and 7+ for intelligence. So the Subnauticon, think of the Big Daddy from Bioshock, the original Bioshock game. And that's pretty much what you're getting with the Subnauticon. He's big, he's tough, he's strong, and he's an absolutely wrecking ball that will eliminate anybody who basically goes in close combat with him as well. At the same time, he's also equipped with a hazard suit, which is actually pretty good. It actually protects him from toxic gas as well as blaze weapons, which is actually kind of nice. Now, the thing about this guy, though, he does not come with any weapons whatsoever. He has no melee weapons or any shooting weapons. He's just using his bare fist. So that's not the thing about that thing. That's not actually that bad. With a strength of 5, he's going to be causing the pain all kinds. Now, there is a problem with the Subnauticon, though. The Subnauticon is so big and strong, he's pretty much going to be a bullet magnet for your enemies. Obviously, because he's so big and strong, your opponent's going to focus most of their efforts to bringing this guy down because of the damage he can cause in close combat. And like I said, this is why you want to pair him up with the Siphonite that we talked about earlier, because the Siphonite, you have to shoot by the closest target towards you, unless of course you get different shooting skills. So more often than not, your opponent's going to be shooting at the closest target towards them. So if you put the Siphonite in front of the Subnauticon, the Siphonite will die. Okay, that's not a problem, but it protects your Subnauticon from harm. At the same time, this is the reason why you also want to keep your Master Nauticon near the Subnauticon as well, because if you use that Overseer ability, this guy can actually double activate twice. That means he can charge twice, get in close combat twice, and cause all kinds of problems. And that's what makes the Subnauticon so dangerous, because when you pair him up with that Overseer ability, he just kind of wrecks through people like it's nobody's business. So in conclusion, this is pretty much the take on the Merchant Guild for the Water Guild Alliance. It's an actually really good alliance. It's got a good mixture of, kind of like I would say, around a middle-tiered guild alliance. It's got a good mixture of tactical as well as strategic assets. That's really good to help out your gang, both on the battlefield and over the course of a campaign as well. And plus, it gives you some pretty strong buffs for your gang. At the same time, the drawbacks are actually quite minimal and not that bad as well. At the same time, like I said before, the Forge World miniatures are absolutely beautiful, but the problem though is that they are a little pricey. I would recommend looking for cheaper alternatives to that, or 3D printing around as well. There's a lot of great subscription services out there that do 3D printing, or you could just kind of cobble them together out of your own miniatures and make your own conversions, or better yet, just proxy them. I have no problem with proxying because it's a good way to see if you even like these guys or not. So like for example, you can proxy with some other miniatures to represent the Water Guild, and then if you like it, you could probably shell out some cash to buy your own. Either way, it's entirely up to you. So there you guys have it. This is actually our very first Merchant Guild Alliance video. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to our channel. That's good for this episode, you guys. We will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay classy.